Hi, this is Daryl Myatt from Keller, Texas. Today is Wednesday, January 26th, 2011. A lot going on today. Who of you saw the president speak last night? Anybody? Anybody care? You know, is it just me, or do you like watching these just to hear how much they're going to lie to you? I mean, I learned at a very early age that you can't really go by what politicians say. You have to go by what they do. Their actions speak much louder than words. Of course, you have to remember, I was born in the early 60s, so I grew up seeing people like Richard Nixon saying, "I am not a crook," when everyone knew he was. You know, it's like, wait a minute, his words don't match up. Okay, so I learned at a very early age that they can be the best speaker in the world, but if they don't back up their words with the actions that go along with them, then what good is it? You know, if they're just speaking good words to get reelected. And you know, lately, the last, I don't know, decade or so, there's always got to be some catchphrase at these State of the Unions. And I found this one a little strange, that Obama's State of the Union address says the U.S. must seize their Sputnik moment. Sputnik moment. Okay, so the Russian space program from back in the 50s. Okay, you know, if you look at the Sputnik program, the first Sputnik, okay, a lot of us kind of think we know what he's talking about, but if you look into it, the Sputnik came back into Earth in a fiery ball, crashed and burned. So the first Sputnik crashed and burned. The second Sputnik had the first live being on board. It was a dog. It had a dog at the controls. So, crash and burn, and a dog running the ship. I present to you, maybe we're having our Sputnik moment right now in this country. Please don't be hating on me, just trying to make light of the subject. So, let's talk about the State of the Union a little bit. Obama focused on Iran, North Korea, but he omits the Mideast peace program. Barack Obama, I'm reading this out of Reuters, out of Washington. President Barack Obama played up U.S. progress in both Afghanistan and Iraq on Tuesday, while declaring the United States would stay tough on North Korea and Iran over their nuclear ambitions. Obama used his annual State of the Nation address to the American people to list foreign policy successes, including the reset in relations with Russia, a growing partnership with India, and a revitalized effort to control the global spread of nuclear weapons. But the stalled Mideast peace effort, which Obama launched in September but quickly foundered on deep Israeli and Palestinian divisions, got no mention. Although White House officials said the omission did not reflect any flagging U.S. commitment to the peace effort. Obama said the United States stood with the people of Tunisia. He mentions Tunisia, this tiny little North African country, where the will of the people proved more powerful than the writ of a dictator, as protests this month forced the departure of longtime President Zayn al-Abidine bin Ali, or something like that. But then he steered clear of any reference to Egypt, where a day of unprecedented protests against President Hosni Mubarak, a longtime U.S. ally, on Tuesday has raised comparisons with the Tunisia revolt. People are getting tired of big government all over the world. How long before it comes here? We'll see. Anyway, I'm not going to go on about what he talked about because, you know, I'm sorry, but politicians can speak all day and not give me anything worth repeating. Sometimes. And don't get the wrong idea. I support whoever is leading this country. I pray for them. I hope they make the right choices. I pray they're being led by God, not any other forces. But I don't agree with a lot of things, and I know a lot of you don't agree with a lot of things this president is doing, especially in regards to Israel. So, just let's watch and see how many of the things he said would get done yesterday are going to get done this year. Keep an eye on that. Let's hold them accountable. What do you say? Why don't we hold these people accountable? When they say something, why don't we make them do it? Hold their feet to the fire and say, you said you were going to do this, now you better do it. I don't know. Alright, let's talk about some other things. This story out of yahoo.com. ancient water tunnel was excavated in Jerusalem. Archaeologists have cleared out a 2,000-year-old tunnel running under the walls of Jerusalem's old city and plugged up over the generations by accumulated debris, the Israel Antiquities Authority said yesterday. Archaeologists believe the tunnel served to drain rainwater near the Second Temple, the center of Jewish faith, destroyed in 70 AD. It runs near but not underneath the sacred and politically explosive enclosure known to the Jews as the Temple Mount and to the Muslims as the noble sanctuary home to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Okay, first of all, this tunnel was already there, and man, there's just an uproar that they're trying to clear it out. They're actually making it available for people to tour through it. And I'd sure love to see that. I've never been to Israel. I would sure love to go there and check that place out for a while. Hopefully soon. Here's a related story out of Haaretz. New Jerusalem tunnel will damage the Temple Mount, the Palestinians say. Despite Israeli claims to the contrary, parts of the tunnel pass just meters from the western wall. The tunnel leading from the city of David in Silwan to beneath the walls of Jerusalem's old city, excavated by the Israeli Antiquities Authority and announced to media fanfare Sunday, is drawing fire from Palestinians who claim it will damage the Temple Mount. Parts of the tunnel come within just a few meters of the western wall, contrary to Antiquities Authority claims yesterday, but officials stressed that the religiously sensitive parts of the tunnel were not dug by the agency. They were dug out many years ago and were merely re-exposed by the project, they say. Concerns about possible riots in East Jerusalem yesterday over the tunnel turned out to be unfounded, and the public debut of the Second Temple-era passageway went off without a hitch. Visitors are now able to walk from the center of Silwan to the Western Wall Plaza within several minutes via a shaft that researchers believe was used for drawing water from the tunnel. That's pretty cool. That was probably the actual streets that Jesus walked on. I'd love to go there and check that out. Alright, you've heard me talk about the Psalms 83 war several times, and I've had some people that want me to expound on that, to kind of go into a little more detail. So turn with me to Psalm 83, and I'm going to read verses 1 through 8. It says, "Do not keep silent, O God, do not hold your peace, and do not be still, O God, for behold, your enemies make a tumult." I'm reading from the New King James. "And those who hate you have lifted up their head. They have taken crafty counsel against your people, and consulted together against your sheltered ones. They have said, 'Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be remembered no more.' For they have counseled together with one consent. They form a confederacy against you, the tents of Edom, and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagrites, Jabal, Ammon, and Amalek, Philistia, with the inhabitants of Tyre. Assyria also has joined with them. They have helped the children of Lot." Okay, let's do a little study on that. You can do a little digging. Some of these places still have the same names or go by the same name, but many of them do not. For instance, the tents of Edom are today's Palestinians and South Jordanians. Okay, track with me here. The second group mentioned, the Ishmaelites, those are the Saudis. Ishmael is the father of all Arabs. Okay, Ishmael, of course, Abraham's son that he had with Hagar, the Egyptian slave woman. Basically, she was Sarah's handmaiden. Moab is the next one mentioned. Moab is present-day Palestinians and Central Jordanians. And you can go to places like Strong's Concordance, you can go to some other sources and track who these people are, where they were, what the names are. The next one mentions the Hagrites. Hagrites are today's Hagarenes, which are Egyptians. Jabal are today's Hezbollah and North Lebanese. That's the next one mentioned. Ammon are the Palestinians and the North Jordanians. What's the next one? Amalek. Amalek are the Arabs of the Sinai area. Okay, Philistia, those are the people of modern-day Hamas of the Gaza Strip, and they're even called Palestines today. Philistines, Palestines, same thing. name changed slightly. Next one, Tyre, Tyre. That's today's Hezbollah in South Lebanese. And then Assyria, that name didn't change much. Today's Syrians and North Iraqis. Now tell me what one thing all these people or places have in common. One thing. They're all Muslim. Check it out. Do some research. Every one of these named are Muslim. If you go back up to Psalm 83, verse 2, the Holy Bible calls these people enemies of God. Those who hate you have lifted up their head. Why do they hate God? They claim they pray to God, this God called Allah. Well, problem is that's not the true God. It's not the true God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They claim Allah has no son, no heir, none whatsoever. Clearly they're denying Jesus Christ as the Son of God. Jesus said, if you do not honor the Son, you do not honor the Father who sent him. There's another verse in John where Jesus said, there will be those who will kill you thinking they're doing a service to God, but they neither know him nor know the Son. Who do you think he's talking about? Enemies of God. Not my words, God's words. Okay? So, I ask you, are they really the religion of peace? And please, Jesus told us to pray for our enemies, not condemn them, not to hate them, not to kill them. These people need our prayers. They need to come to the truth that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. He died on the cross. He's the Savior of the world. If you deny the Son, you do not have the Father who sent him. And this whole religion, nearly 2 billion of them, deny the Son. They're in serious need of our prayers. Alright, moving on. You've heard me talk about Tunisia and Egypt. This out of the CS Monitor. Energized by Tunisia, Egypt protesters surge onto the streets today in the day of wrath. Okay, I'm not going to go through this whole thing. You've probably seen this on CNN, your local news, whatever. Egyptians defied security forces, poured into the streets around the nation in historic protests calling for an end to the autocratic regime of President Hosni Mubarak. They want democracy. People were saying, look, here's our government fighting us in the streets. It's creating lots of chaos. People don't want big government. You know, in our country, our Constitution says it's the government for the people, by the people, and of the people. When was the last time that was in effect? These days, it just looks like it's a government for the government, and to heck with the people. Who else gives themselves raise? I vote we raise our pay starting today. Well, I second that motion. Who else can do that? How come these people don't hold to the same standards they try to impose upon us? Why don't we have a 28th Amendment saying that everything Congress imposes upon the public is imposed upon them too, and that nothing they tell us to do is too good for them, or not good enough for them? Okay, so if they impose it upon the people, it should be imposed upon them too. And we should get the same kind of health care and retirement benefits that they do. You with me? Government of the people, for the people, by the people. Just saying, you know, let's make it fair. Okay, this out of the World Tribune, the Arab League says to its members, economic conditions are fueling unprecedented anger. Arab leaders have been warned that they are vulnerable to the same kind of revolt that ousted Tunisia's president. The Arab League Secretary General Ammar Moussa urged member states to quickly confront their economic and social problems. Moussa warned that the unrest was reaching unprecedented levels throughout the Middle East. The Arab citizen has entered a stage of anger that is unprecedented, Moussa said. Really? Who do you think they're going to take their anger out on? You got it. Israel. Israel. How's that going to happen? Well, let's see. We got Hezbollah in the north, Hamas in the south. We're going to have Iran ships in the Mediterranean Sea. Let's take that Muslim anger out on the people of God, the true God. Wow. It's amazing. All right, here's something out of WorldNet Daily. This is a game changer. Arizona's going to pass a 2012 eligibility law. It says it could be a game changer. A plan in Arizona to require presidential candidates to prove their eligibility to occupy the Oval Office is approaching critical mass, even though it has just been introduced. The proposal from State Rep. Judy Burgess, who carried a similar plan that fell short last year only because of political maneuvering, was introduced yesterday with 16 members of the state Senate as co-sponsored. It only needs 16 votes in the Senate to pass. It needs 25 in the House. There are 25 co-sponsors with the need for only 31 votes for passage. And Burgess told WorldNet Daily there are several chamber members who confirm they support the plan and will vote for it. The proposal, which is also being taken up by a number of other states, is highly specific and directly addresses the questions that have been raised by Barack Obama's occupancy of the White House. It says, and I'm quoting, "Within 10 days after the submittal of the names of the candidates, the National Political Party Committee shall submit an affidavit of the presidential candidate in which the presidential candidate states the candidate's citizenship and age and shall append to the affidavit documents, birth certificate, that prove that the candidate is a natural-born citizen. Prove the candidate's age and prove that the candidate meets the residency requirements for President of the United States as prescribed in Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution of the United States." You know, it's sad that we have to have something like this to enforce the Constitution of the United States. But I say we need it. The critical phrases here are natural-born citizen, and the requirements are Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution. Again, I'm curious to see what's going to happen when the whole world finds out we had an illegal president. Just curious. Just curious. Okay, yes, I'm still talking about suffering. You know, every day I turn on the TV, I get on the internet, and I see suffering everywhere. It's hard not to talk about it. And nowhere else in the Bible is suffering so completely the topic than it is in Job. In Job 1:1 says there was a man named Job. He feared God and he stayed away from evil. And then you know God and Satan are having this discussion. But in the first few verses of the book that bears his name, Job is hit with one calamity after another. You talk about trials, tribulations, suffering. He loses his possessions. He loses his children. He loses his wife. He loses his health. Everything is taken away from this man except his very life. His body's covered with boils. It's terrible. This man had great wealth, and he was a faithful servant of God. The next several chapters of the book are a record of Job talking through his trials with three of his so-called friends. And with friends like that, let me just say, who needs enemies, okay? Because those friends, today they'd be like, "Dude, what'd you do? What made God so mad at you, man? You just need to, give up and die." Great friends, great friends. Some undeniably bad things just happened, and in his state of confusion, Job attempts to work his way through why God would let all this happen to him. Why was he being punished for some kind of secret sin he didn't remember? Had God suddenly turned evil? Why was this going on? Then God shows up. But instead of answering these questions head on, he simply reminds Job of the fact that he can never fully understand why he does what he does. Let me give you some readings from that. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind. In Job 38, verse 4, God says, "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. What determined its measurements? Or who stretched the stars out upon the sky? Who can change the belt in Orion's belt?" God, asks him these huge questions because Job is just in despair. He's like, God, why? What about this? And what about that? And God doesn't answer his questions. Doesn't really tell him why. But sometimes all a person can do in the midst of their suffering is trust that God is bigger than their circumstances. God is bigger than anything happening to you right now. God says, don't worry about why this has happened. Trust in who has allowed it. Those are big words. And Job's response is very profound. If you go to Job 40, verses 4 and 5, then Job answered the Lord and says, Behold, I am vile. What shall I answer you? I lay my hand over my mouth. Once I have spoken, but I will not answer. Yes, twice, but I will proceed no further. He's saying, I've got nothing more to say. What can I say, God? What can I say? Sometimes we'll never know exactly why He's allowed this or that to happen in our lives. But the key is in understanding that God is greater than everything in this life, including our trials, and especially our sufferings. He invites us to pray and ask questions whenever we find ourselves suffering, which is a lot. But we also need to recognize that there are times when the best thing to do is to just stand in silent awe of who God is. He's much bigger than us. God says, my thoughts and ways are so much higher above you that you can't even understand. We need to trust in Him always. Get into the Word and pray without ceasing. God bless you. Good Lord willing, I'll see you again tomorrow.